Shavua Tov. What is the secret of righteousness? Noah was righteous in a world that was completely not righteous. He was the only human being worthy of being saved in the generation of the flood. How did he do it? How did one person choose to live on a different level than the entire human race, right? It's one thing if you live in a town where, let's say, a lot of people are bad, but there are some people who are good. You could choose whom you wish to associate with. But Noah had no one to associate with. How was he a righteous person? What was the secret of his success, and can we use it? Let's take a look at that, but let's take a look first at the reaction, another important question of how they dealt with the trauma and the tragedy of the flood. How do we deal with situations that are not to our liking and setbacks that may happen? And I bless everybody that you shouldn't have any setbacks. But for the sake that the method of dealing with setbacks is still something that we should do, even if we don't have setbacks, because as we will see, it is very potent and very powerful. So the flood was no innocent thing. In the kids' room, we have a picture of Noah's Ark with colorful animals, and it's all very nice and innocent, but the flood was anything but innocent. This was an upheaval of unbelievable proportions. The entire human race was destroyed, except for one man and his family and representatives of every species of the animal kingdom. And the world, even before the flood, was a very harsh place. Noah, say the rabbis, invented the plow. So think about that. Before he invented the plow, if you wanted to eat bread, you had to go out into the field, get on your hands and knees, dig it up with your hands. There were no tools. You had to plant it. You wanted to water it. You had to find a way to transport the water, but there was a lot of rain in those days, so that perhaps wasn't an issue. But it was still a very difficult existence. That's why when Noah comes along, the Torah says that people said, he's going to make it easier for us from the difficult labor of our hands because the earth has been cursed by the Lord. So Noah invented the plow. There's a custom that we have when we eat bread to put all 10 fingers on the bread as we make the blessing, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. And I think there are 10 words. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz. 10 words in the bracha as well. Why so? Because Adam, the first human being, if he wanted to eat bread, he had to do 10 different labors all by his lonesome. He had to plow, he had to plant, he had to clear the stones away from the field, he had to irrigate, he had to harvest, he had to thresh, he had to separate, he had to grind, he had to knead, and he had to bake. I don't know if I had 10 there, but there were 10 labors that he had to do, all by himself. Nowadays we have it good. All we have to do is go to the makolet. So this was a very harsh world, and this was a harsh experience. Noah and his family, the entire world that they knew was gone. And they're now in this bleak landscape, the only human beings. How do they deal with tragedy? I believe there are 4 reactions we can see in the episode that happens after the flood. One is Noah's reaction, which I believe he was healed from, but his initial reaction was basically to escape, emotionally to escape. How so? The Torah says he planted a vineyard, he went into his tent, got himself so drunk that he undressed and was not even aware of it. That was total escapism. I can't deal with such a difficult setback, said Noah. I can't deal with this new reality, this new world that I'm in. I will drink my way out of it. And so that's exactly what he does. That is not the Jewish approach, obviously. What about the other 3? So Ham, his son, comes and sees that Noah has become naked in his tent, and then he goes and tells his brothers Shem and Yefet. They are horrified to hear this, and so they take a garment and they walk into Noah's tent backwards, so as not to compromise Noah's modesty, so as not to see his nakedness, and they cover him. Excuse me. And then when he recovers, when he becomes sober, he curses Ham and Ham's son Canaan. They are going to be slaves to Shem and Yefet, whom he blesses because they behave decently and respectfully towards him. Now, what exactly did Ham do to Noah? So Rashi brings 2 opinions. One is that he sterilized him. The other one is that he sodomized him. Wow, these are 2 extreme opinions. Rabbi Abner Weiss from America gives a very nice explanation of what these 2 reactions to trauma and tragedy represent. One is the approach of depression, giving up. He sterilized his father. There shouldn't be any more children in the world because the world is such a harsh place. There's no reason to go on. Almost suicide in a sense, but doing it for the next generation, making sure that his father has no more children. There shouldn't be other children born, because it's just, why have children when such a terrible fate may await them? That is not the Jewish approach, but it is an understandable one. It is very natural that people who've gone through a trauma may desire to not continue. They must fight that and must move forward. And we find even great people falling prey to that feeling. The parents of the generation of Moses, Amram, was a leader in the tribe of Levi. He, when Pharaoh made the decree that all of the boys have to be thrown into the river, he separated from his wife. He said, no way, why have children if they're going to get thrown into the river? And all of the men followed suit and separated from their wives. And then it was Miriam, who was Amram and Yocheved's daughter. Excuse me, she was the oldest. She comes and she says to her father, you are worse than Pharaoh. And Amram says, what do you mean worse than Pharaoh? And she says, because Pharaoh made a decree that all the boys get thrown into the river, but the girls can survive. But you, if you're not going to have any children because you're afraid, then there won't be girls born either. You do your part. You keep moving. You keep going, and whatever happens, happens. You don't control it, but you do not have the right to run away from this world. So the approach that Cham took, and Amram, of course, agrees and accepts what his daughter says, comes back, and lo and behold, Moses is born, who will be the savior of Israel from their Egyptian slavery, the representative of God, and of course the one who gives us who is the vehicle through whom God gives us the Torah. Okay, so that's not the Jewish approach of depression and self-harm and no future. No, we must keep going forward. What about sodomizing Noah, according to the other opinion that Rashi brings? Well, this is a different approach. This is the approach of life is meaningless. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. No more moral restraint. Let's indulge in all of the physical pleasures of this world and not give a darn about whether it's correct or not correct, moral or not moral, because it's all meaningless anyway. That's not the approach of the Jewish tradition and religion either. But it is unfortunately a very wide-held opinion. There are a lot of people that believe that life is indeed meaningless, and it's tragic that they think that. And as a result, they feel that the purpose of life is to enjoy it as much as you can get away with. That is not the Jewish approach. But what is the Jewish approach? Looking towards the future. Shem and Yefet, they say, you know something? There is going to be a future. We're going to have children. And as a result, even under these extreme circumstances, we are going to keep alive dignity, respect, modesty, and hope. And as a result, even Noah comes back to his sober senses. Perhaps it was the actions of Shem and Yefet, more than the action of Ham, that brought Noah back to himself, because he indeed had been a tzaddik. Now, this is a very fascinating approach, and I heard an idea this week that's really impressed me from a non-Jewish source. Dan Sullivan is a well-known coach of entrepreneurs, but he's more than that. I believe he's a philosopher, because I listen to him a lot, and he's got many fascinating ideas about society and not just economics, but the way people work and interact with each other. And he said something very interesting this week. He said, what is the difference between an ethical business person and an unethical business person? Now, Dan Sullivan, when he gives an answer to questions, usually the answer is a surprising answer, which when you think about it is quite profound. He said the difference between an ethical business person and an unethical business person is time frame. Time frame? What exactly does that mean? He says, well, what is an unethical business person? Somebody who will cheat, will misrepresent, overcharge, sell people things that are destructive to them and not beneficial to them. Drug dealers are unethical business people, for example. It says time frame. The unethical business person is only concerned about making the sale and making money now, right now. Whatever will solve my problem now, that is what I will do. The ethical business person has a time frame of years, let's say 10 years. The ethical business person, who is honest, who provides true value and provides true service, he says, I want to have this business in 10 years too. And so therefore, in order to do that, I have to build trust, I have to build reputation, I have to provide consistent value, and then I will be successful 10 years into the future. So in other words, it's time frame. And well, that seems to be exactly what's happening between the sons of Noah, Ham on the one hand and Shem and Yefet on the other. Ham is closed into that particular moment. And so, by the way, is Noah. Either escape right now or create a harmful outcome right now, self-damaging. No more children should be born. Depression, end it all here. There's no future. Or eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. Just live for today and forget about tomorrow. That's all in the now-focused people. And Shem and Yefet are thinking about the future. You know, there's an amazing story that I like to tell about a woman named Lily Friedman. Lily Friedman wanted to get married. She was engaged to Ludwig, and she wanted to wear a beautiful white wedding dress at her wedding, which is a very normal thing to do, except there was a problem. You see, it was just a few weeks after the end of World War II, and they were in a displaced persons camp called Buchenwald. Where are you going to find a white wedding dress in Buchenwald? Well, so it seems that her fiancé Ludwig was working with the United States Army at that time, helping as a salesperson in their little kiosk in their little store. And one fine day, a former German paratrooper comes in and wants coffee and cigarettes. He doesn't have money, though. What can he pay with? Will you take this parachute for payment? And Ludwig sees all that beautiful white silk, and he says, "Ha, I'll take it." He takes it to a woman named Miriam in the camp who's a seamstress, and he says to her, "Can you make a wedding dress out of this?" And she says, "Can I make a wedding dress out of this?" She does, a beautiful wedding dress, and Lily and Ludwig get married. At the end of the ceremony, another couple comes up and says, "Do you think we could borrow that dress? Because, well, we're getting married tomorrow." And another couple, and Lily says that she counted at least 17 couples that got married in those days, right after the end of the Shoah, the end of World War II, in that white wedding dress made from a German parachute. A little footnote to the story: a number of years ago, I was a guest cantor for the High Holidays in Baltimore, Maryland, and excuse me, at the Shabbos table, at the Yom Tov table on Rosh Hashanah, conversation was going on, and the rabbi's wife informed me that her mother had been married in a DP camp, wearing a wedding dress that had been fashioned out of a German parachute. And I said, "That's amazing. If you want to see your mom's wedding dress, I believe all you need to do is drive 45 minutes down I-95 to Washington, D.C. It's on display with the whole story at the United States Holocaust Museum." Fascinating. And this story, by the way, is also proof of a good old Yiddish saying. The Yiddish saying is, "A Mensch tracht und Gott lacht." A man plans and God laughs. Oto Haish, that evil man from Germany who wanted to destroy the future of the Jewish people, wanted to do it with the tools of war, including this parachute. And so the very tools that he sought to use to destroy the future of the Jewish people were in Buchenwald, all of a sudden turned into a wedding dress to give rebirth to the future of the Jewish people. What an inspiring story. But that is the way that Jews react to trauma. In the weeks after the Holocaust, instead of falling into depression or into depravity or into distraction, because those were the other three options: distraction in the alcoholism, depression in Ham sterilizing his father, or depravity in him sodomizing his father. No, the Jewish people looked towards destiny, to the future. The Jewish people are always looking to rebuild. And that may be the secret of Noah's success. You see, Noah, the Torah tells us, when he was, I'll do it this way. At what age had the people in Noah's generation generally given birth? Young. They had kids when they were in their 80s or 90s. Young. Well, I say young because back in those days, people were living for centuries. People lived 800, 900 years. Noah himself will live 950. I think he was the second oldest or something, or close to it. Methuselah being the oldest, who lived 960. So people lived a long time. But they had kids, relatively young when they were in their 80s, right? How old was Noah when he had kids? 500. 500. Wow. What was he waiting for? See, Noah waits for everything. He takes a long time. He's making the ark. How long did it take him to make the ark? 100 years. Partly because he was doing it himself, and this was a new thing, shipbuilding. Nobody knew about this. It wasn't a ship, it was a barge. But it fulfilled the purpose. Nonetheless, Noah is not one rushing for today. He's always prepared to wait with patience and see what's going to be tomorrow. And that is the ticket, perhaps, to righteousness. That whenever we make decisions that will affect ourselves or the people around us, think about how will it affect them, not today, excuse me, but in 5 years, 10 years, 50 years. Because that will guide us in making smarter decisions when we think about what's the long-term effect of these decisions. Shem and Yefet made a long-term decision. There is going to be a human race, and we have to fill it with respect and with dignity and be forward-looking, just like Noah himself was able to be the only righteous person in his entire generation because he looked always towards the future and did not pursue the pleasures, the distractions, and the depravities of today. Shavua Tov.